something that I don't think people have fully thought through. Like, what would you do to stay out of jail?
Anything.
Right? Like, what? Like, if in your personal life, what would you do to stay out of jail?
And this is like for the rest of his life. And we know that Trump, like, he's a germaphobe, like he's a weirdo, like
it's hard to get good cheeseburgers in jail, you know.
Like, going to prison for the rest of his life and like losing everything is his biggest fear. He's cornered.
Right?
Like, you thought January 6th was bad?
To quote Louis Gossett Jr., he's going to use any means, fair or unfair, to keep his ass out of jail. Like, he is going to do everything he can to stay out of jail. And right now, the best way for him to stay out of jail is to become president of the United States again. It is a straight shot. And there are historical antecedents for this thought process, right? Many of your listeners might be aware of a man named Julius Caesar. And there was a critical point in history where Julius Caesar crosses the Rubicon River and invades Rome with his army. Why did Julius Caesar go to Rome with his army? Well, because if he had gone to Rome without his army, he would have been arrested and put in jail. Caesar was under tons of lawsuits. He had debts that he could not pay. Where does that sound familiar? And Cato the Younger was sitting there, was a lawyer, and was basically sitting there with his legal pad being like, oh, we got this Caesar guy. We got Jules.
Yep.
And so instead of going to jail, Jules showed up to Rome with his army and declared himself dictator for life. I am not making that up, folks. That is the history of how Julius Caesar ends up as a dictator. And while I don't think Trump has read that history, you know, I'm sure one of his people has. I'm sure Stephen Miller has, right? So this idea that you have to win political power or go to jail has happened to historical figures many times in the past, and they always choose, let's try to win political power.
I think of, like, Saddam Hussein didn't have weapons of mass destruction, but told everyone he did, to the point where the United States declared war against him and invaded his country, all because he was scared of the alternative. The alternative was worse. He was so desperate that he was willing to go up against the U.S. military because he was scared of the alternative. Donald Trump is, in effect, going up against the U.S. military.
Well, he thinks he's going to be able to control the U.S. military, which is the real scary thing, right? He thinks that he's going to... And look, if he gets into power again, you got to understand, dictators need training too, right?
Mm-hmm. Hitler didn't get it right on the first try, like,
right? They need some on the job training as well. And you have to think of Trump's first term as a test run in dictatorship, right? And the thing that he learned the most from his first 4 years in office, and you can go to any teapot dictator in any developing country on this globe, and that, you know, despot, strongman, whatever, will tell you the same thing. You have to surround yourself with yes men who are loyal to you and nobody else. That is the key. They don't have to be good at their job. They don't have to be smart. They don't have to be pretty. They have to be loyal to you. And that's the difference between what Trump's first term looked like and what his second term will look like. He will only appoint people to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, to be the generals, to be the cabinet secretaries, to be the attorney general. He will only appoint people whose loyalty is to Trump and not the American government and not the people of this country. And that will allow him to do things that he wasn't able to get away with the first time around. He's learned that lesson now, and we can expect him to apply those lessons should he take power again. The other thing, as I keep trying to remind people, if they give Trump power in 2024, when do they think he's leaving again?
Yeah,
because it ain't going to be 2028. That man is not going to look at the 22nd Amendment of the Constitution and be like, oh no, I have to go home now. So sad. It was a great time, guy. No, if Trump gets power again, he ain't leaving until he's in a coffin.
Yes.
He is president for the rest of his life. He will never allow himself to be out of power again. Believe. So again, if you like this whole thing, this whole idea of like we get to vote for our leaders, like you can't vote
People
for
think
this
we're
one.
full of shit. People like don't believe it when we say those kind of things. It's like, oh, look at them, look at the Democrats, they're bloviating, they're overreacting, look at them being emotional. But like, Kash Patel could be the CIA director. Stephen Miller could be Attorney General. Like,
I mean, for a lot of people, look, and I know you did this too. We go out into our community and we talk to people, we talk to young people, and Trump has been normalized for them.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm at the shop, and I'm not there often, obviously, but you know, when people have lived through it before.
Yeah.
And the walls didn't come down. And so they act like, well, it's probably, they'll survive the next one too, right? And so when you think that Trump, it's part of the media normalization of this man, but when you think of Trump as one option among many, that's how you get some of his, I wouldn't call it strength. I mean, the white pollsters are like, oh, he's surprisingly strong in the black community. Trump is going to lose the black vote between 75% and 85%. And it's a big difference between 75 and 85.
If he loses by 75, he'll be president.
Right?
He capped out at 12%, and that's the highest.
Right? Like
in
2020. The numbers are important because what black people have to do is overcome the vast majority of white people in this country, right?
Yes.
We have to vote for a person like Joe Biden at 85, 88, 89% because 55% of white folks are going to vote for the dictator regardless. 52% of white women are going to vote for the man who took away abortion rights, right? Like that's just going to happen. And to overcome
no matter what,
that, it's why we have to get the numbers up to where they are. But I always try to make people remember that because a presidential candidate winning a demographic by 75% in any normal circumstances, that's a huge win.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not that black people are falling down on their duties if they vote for Trump, for Biden 75 to 25, right? That's not us screwing up. That's white folks being too powerful for us to stop. That's what that is. That said, the difference between 75% and 88% is the difference between Trump being president or not. And at those margins, on those marginal cases, what I find, are black people who have been normalized and thus can anesthetize to Trump. They think he's fine. They don't like him, but they're like, whatever. You know,
it
they're
didn't
all
change their day-to-day life,
right? They're unimpressed by Biden for various reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them legitimate, some of them kind of media trumped up. But you know, even people are going to vote for.
Let's just say, I'm just going to say it because I'm not trying to go be the spokesman for the DNC or any of that kind of stuff anymore. Like, no one wanted to vote for Biden in the first place. He was the guy that was there that we knew could beat Trump. Like, he was the best choice out of a lot of choices that people weren't really happy with. But
Biden
we knew
was a
we could
defensive
win.
vote the first time around.
Yeah, like
right?
and really, he's going to be a defensive vote the second time around.
You know, I wrote about this in The Nation back in the day, but black people voting for Biden, it was kind of a black indictment of white folks.
Yeah.
Right? It was y'all white folks, y'all are so racist. You're not going to accept Kamala Harris. You're not going to accept Cory Booker. You're not going to accept Pete Buttigieg, right? You need an old white guy. So here's your old white guy. Let's have this old white guy as opposed to that old white guy, please. Right? That's the Biden vote kind of when you break down what's really happening in the presidential primary cycle of 2020. Black people saying, white folks, we don't trust you enough. Here, Joe Biden, you'll take that. Right?
And I think there's an exhaustion too, though. It's like, how many times are we gonna have to save you guys?
Right?
Like, how many times are we gonna have to show up to the polls and save you from yourself?
Yeah. That said, all the time. The answer is
every election.
Time. They constantly need saving. It's like if you have, if you said you're about to get married, when you have a kid, it's all the time. The kid will always try to kill themselves, and all the time you have to be like, no, don't do, no, right?
Stay away
And
from that electrical bolt.
that's black people to white folks, right? Like, just no, you can't. You're gonna hurt your students. No, right? No, you can't eat that. That's disgusting. Stop it, right? That's where we are, and so we can't afford to be exhausted, right? And so, I always do this thing in my head. I don't know, I'm weird. I understand this, but there'll be times when I'm just sitting there and I'm so fed up and I'm so angry and I'm so exhausted. And I'll be like, just like in a CVS, and I'll see some MAGA crap, and I'll be like, and I'll kind of like think, like, what would Frederick Douglass do, right? And I think like Frederick Douglass could show up and like, brother, you saying you have every book on your phone,
yes,
in your pocket, and you sad,
drive,
right?
You drive.
They let you walk around free.
Yep.
And you exhausted, right? Like it's a joke. But like, I try to remember that, like, our aunts. I come from stock. We come from stock that did not have the opportunity and the luxury to get exhausted. If our ancestors had gotten exhausted, I wouldn't be here. And so I try to, and then look, I'm not dogging people. I get exhausted too. I get fed up too.
Yeah.
But I try to remember that is not the people I come from. I do not come from a people that have the luxury of being exhausted. I come from fighters, right?
And I try to remind people, because you hear all the time, oh, get over it. It was a long time ago. Like, it was not a long time ago. Black people not having the right to vote was not a long time ago. Segregation was not a long time ago. My marriage would be illegal.
My mom is a black woman who was born in 1950 in Mississippi.
Oof.
Right? She lives with me. That's not a long time ago when my mother couldn't vote or couldn't go to a school or couldn't go into a library. She's got ridiculous stories of sitting on the steps outside of a library, having to wait for white folks to bring her a book because she wasn't allowed in to the library. That ain't a long time ago. All right. I went to a family reunion in Mississippi 20 years ago. I was kind of a kid. And we're going through her old, haunts or whatever. And I don't care. I'm 20 something and it's hot, and I'm like, what the hell? Anyway. She's like, you want some water? I'm like, no. She's like, well, drink from this water fountain. I'm like, why? I'm not thirsty. What the hell? Drink from the water fountain. All right, Jesus Christ. And I bend down, drink from this water fountain. And you can see that all they had done was scratch out the whites only from the water fountain. The impression was still there on this water fountain. And I realized, 23, whatever, that my mother was having me drink from a water fountain that she wasn't allowed to drink out of when she was a kid. Nah, it wasn't a long time ago.
It's real.
It just wasn't. Let's roll this again after the conventions, man.
Ooh,
see where we stand.